This is Up for Debate, episode number 263, recorded October 5th, 2023. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Up for Debate, the debate podcast where the two hosts agree on everything. I'm Sean Jennings, joined by a man who could easily run a giant tech company into the ground. It is Matt Mariani. Hello, Matt.
Hello there, Mr. Sean. Yes, it is I. I could easily destroy a tech company, especially one that's Canadian.
Yes. Well, when their currency is maple leaves and I don't know what else, you can't have a business.
Justin Bieber tokens. It's got Justin Bieber on the front, and it's got Nickelback album artwork on the back.
Oh no!
And
I know. I bet Blackberry wishes they had their nickel back.
Yeah, they probably do. I don't know. Seemed like in the end they after the whole thing was all said and done, they oh no, that's Daughtry. Never mind. I was gonna sing the song the lyrics to that's what's that song called? The Daughtry song. Over You. I thought it was Nickelback for a minute, but it's Daughtry. They sound almost identical. So
yeah, but this is how you remind me, Matt. No, so if you're wondering what we're rambling on about here at the top of the show, Matt, we are back. It's our final to-do list for the summer now that it's October. And many of you may remember way back at the beginning of the summer, we did our summer book club in which we picked some books we wanted to read over the course of the summer, and we are here tonight to talk about them. Some of the things.
I don't know. I think we could have done better. I think we could have done better
really?
this summer.
Oh,
I liked the book that I read, the Lost the Signal. I thought it was decent. I felt like the books that between this and the Blockbuster, I felt like they were kind of the same. Not the same, but like in a similar vein or a similar mindset. And I think in the past we were always good about making our picks very far apart, like far-reachingly apart.
Now I'm starting to get worried, Matt, because did you read In the Heart of the Sea?
Yes. No, yes, I did read In the Heart of the Sea.
Okay. I'm just
had you worried for a minute.
I did, because I'm like, Losing the Signal technically wasn't a pick. I'm glad you read it. It's an interesting book. No, I agree. I think between those two, it's a lot of similar themes.
Did we not pick Losing the Signal?
No, you had picked Built to Fail, and I had picked In the Heart of the Sea.
Oh. All right, I read all three of them, so our bases are
we're going to talk about all three of them.
Okay.
So you're in good shape.
Yeah, no. So In the Heart of the Sea, I felt like it was still kind of like, I don't know. It was like too real, too true. We were used to like whimsy and fantastical realism here on Up for Debate. We read books like the Haruki Murakami Clockwork Bird Chronicles. Like we read stuff like that.
We read the book about Elizabeth Holmes and her blood tech startup. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I don't know. I think what I'm saying here, Sean, is I think we need to read more. We need to read more beach mystery reads. That was my theme for the summer. I read several beach mystery like, what I mean by beach mystery is like you read it while you're at the beach and you can finish it in like one sitting. We didn't read any of those this year. This go around.
Listen, Matt, I have a stack of Dean Koontz books just waiting to be read. So
exactly. We could probably write one of those.
Oh, well, I don't know. Creatively, we're definitely challenged. No, I promise, Matt, next summer, no business history books. I think we've been burned a little bit. But let's dig it. Matt, is there one of these you want to start with?
We could start with In the Heart of the Sea, since that was the one that I subjected you to. If that's where
Well,
you
I
want
got
to
to tell you,
go.
Matt. I think you and I are going to have some different opinions tonight, which is a treat. So,
Hmm.
In the Heart of the Sea, Nathaniel Philbrick, the true story of the Essex whaling ship that was sunk by an angry whale, leaving the crew to drift for more than 90 days in the Pacific, the basis for the novel Moby Dick. Uh, Now, Matt, remind me, you had not read this prior to the summer, is that correct?
Right. It had been kind of been on my my radar for a while though. So I thought this was a good opportunity to finally read it.
Well, I actually read it, Matt. We hung out a little bit this past week in New York City. I read it on the train there and back. For me, it was a pretty quick read, and I got to tell you, Matt, I liked this book a lot. It really fell into a great sweet spot of what I like in a book, which is it's. I thought it was generally well told. I thought this might be one of the best examples of a book that transitions well between an overarching story and small tangents, where you'd be reading about, oh, they were on the whaling boats and it was the day and it was the end of their food, and they would transition very seamlessly into this talk about what is starvation and what does it mean to the body. And there was a lot of interesting things, but this was a topic. You're a student of history, obviously, and history is painted with a very broad brush. And I like books that get into little minutia bits of history. And like, I knew nothing about whaling. I really didn't. I didn't know that the ships went all the way to the Pacific. Like, that was total news to me. I knew nothing about this. And so it was really interesting to learn about some of the history of whaling mixed in with the story. And it was a gripping read. So I enjoyed it, Matt. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you if you know me, one of the things that I really enjoy the most is 15th to 17th century uh, to reads about like the ocean, about like an expedition on the ocean, especially ill-fated ones. So this one was definitely right up in my wheelhouse. I thought that it was really good. I'm kind of just shocked that you enjoyed it, Sean. I didn't think this would be I
I'm
didn't think this
shocked
would be
too.
in your interest at all. I thought it was yeah, the stories, the I didn't, first of all, when I first picked it up, I was like, how are they going to do an entire book about this that's not too similar to Moby Dick? Now, I've never completely read Moby Dick. Um, I've gotten pretty far. Usually, I'll try to pick it up every so often. I'll plug away at it, but I can't really say I've made it too far in a Moby Dick. But I wasn't sure how you could write the story about the story, and I thought this was even more compelling because it did such a great job depicting that world in which Moby Dick is set, that kind of environment, that kind of the characters, that you could see their inspiration. You could see the inspiration for the voyage, especially the parts toward the like I guess the second act, when they're actually out at sea. It does get very very tense in some parts. And so yeah, I overall I enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a good example of using a specific story to tell a broader story. Because that's one of the problem I do have with history is when it gets really broad, I tune out. Like, there's just a lot of it, and so I like when specific stories. I think Devil in the White City, a book we read on this show, is another good example of that, telling specific stories of specific people in the context of a time or of an era, um, in a way that was very compelling. He's actually the same guy's written a number of other books. He's written one on the Mayflower, which is something I really don't know any of the details about. So I've already added that to my wish list as one to read.
Yeah, his I do really like his style. Nathaniel Philbrick. I like his just his characters are a lot more lively than I was expecting going in. I wasn't really sure what the narrative style was going to be. If this was going to be told through like journal entries, or if it was just going to be kind of told through like a more historical lens. It comes very much comes alive where he like his characters are really characters. He talks about there's a lot of dialogue, um, like they're kind of living the adventure in real time, which I really liked. So um, he talks about like the different parts of New England and the people that come from there and like what they're like and how their upbringings influenced them. It was cool. It was a really good read, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple wild moments, Matt. I did want to mention though. I think the most wild thing to me in the book was at the end, after the survivors had made it all the way back to Nantucket, a number of them went back on the boats. They went back out. They kept
Yeah.
sailing, which is crazy. I was going to ask you, Matt, do you think you could survive on a whaling ship of this era?
Yes. I would do so with gusto. I would be very.
Getting harpooning the whale and
I think
cutting
so.
off its blubber.
Um, I would certainly like to try. I would like to think that I could pick it at a job at sea. That's my backup career. I don't know if you knew that, Sean. My backup career. I'm gonna move to Maine and
Whaler.
become a lobsterman. Lobsterman.
I would.
I
I
don't know if
no no.
the world isn't ready for me to be a whaler, but maybe if
But
I
that would
start
be
small
so
with some
funny. Is you
lobsters.
just show up in Nantucket in like an old timey sea outfit and with a harpoon and say, "I'm here. I'm here to whale.
I'm gonna show up
Point
to
me
the
to the
interview.
ships."
Actually, in the interview, I'll get there before the guy interviewing me gets there, and I'll just be facing like a window, and then like so when he comes in, I'll just like do the thing from Jaws where he like scratches the the wind that he runs his nails down the window, makes like that loud sound. Turn around, I'll catch ye a whale.
Ooh, salty
Take me
Captain
aboard ye
Matt.
ship. I'll catch
I
ye a
love it.
whale. Sonny Jim.
I love it. No, I am
So I
a
get hired.
massive wimp and loser. I could never make it. I mean, it's high risk, Matt. The thing is, you're out for 3 to 4 years. So if like a week into it, you're like, "This sucks," you're kind of screwed.
Kind of committed.
Yeah.
But you get to see all sorts of cool things like the Azores. You get to see Cape Verde Islands. You get to see like where all the other little Atlantic islands that they went out
Get to
to.
eat hardtack.
Yep.
Have you ever
The
eaten
view in the sea.
hardtack?
I actually have. I have eaten
Where
hard.
where did you find hardtack?
I found it. No, I ate some at Mount Vernon, home of George
Oh,
Washington. I
the
believe
gift shop's that bad, huh?
they they served hardtack. No, it was I don't know. It was like one of the exhibits there. One of the like little people, the people outside. I'm pretty sure they make hardtack. Or no, maybe it was Williamsburg. Excuse me, maybe it was Williamsburg in Virginia. At least I hope it was somebody who worked there. I believe it was. otherwise, I was in for a real treat. Just had a vagrant poison me with what I thought was hardtack.
Well, you know, hardtack.
It's real bad. Yeah,
Well, hardtack is still apparently very popular in Alaska.
it's real dry. Not something I think I would ever be super stoked to be eating. It's
Well,
kind of more of a necessity thing.
maybe that'll be our next baking challenge. is we'll make our own
We haven't done one
hardtack.
of those remember when we made macarons?
I do. I would love to cook again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also hardtack is very easy to make. It's just flour and water.
I think we haven't done a baking challenge since we've both moved into our respective homes, I'm pretty sure. I think when
That's
I made the
true.
macarons, I was still in an apartment.
Well, now it's a little higher risk, Matt, because if you start a fire at your own house, you're burning down.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's true. Up the ante a little bit. Higher it raises the stakes. So in the heart
well,
of the sea, what else is there to say about
we
in the
gotta.
heart of the sea?
Do you remember how we rated these things? Buy it, borrow it, or skip it. How about that, Matt? In the heart of the sea, buy it, borrow it, or skip it.
Buy it, borrow it, or skip it. I would say heart of the sea. I would say borrow it. I'm a borrow it. That's how I would probably gauge it. This is a book that I think it tells it spins a pretty interesting story about the story that inspired Moby Dick. I think it's cool because it's in today's day and age, people are, we could both probably agree, people are kind of bereft of ideas, right?
Mm.
I mean, unless they have a moderately successful podcast program like ours, right? We can come up with some ideas. We're we're
Although
too
bereft of
creative.
ideas would be a more accurate title for the show.
Wide, wow. All right, rebrand. All right, let's launch the rebrand. Bereft of ideas. Sean and Matt, bereft of ideas. I could see it now.
Bereft of ideas.
So, yeah, in this kind of world, this story um would be like they would make this a movie, which they did. They did make this a movie, and it would be terrible because it would just be like kind of an inspiration or lack thereof for like original ideas. I think that this was a good book. I think as far as original stories go, as far as origin stories go, this was a good one. So I recommend you pick it up.
I would agree. All right, Matt, let's move on to the next one here. Why don't we do Losing the Signal, the untold story behind the extraordinary rise and spectacular fall of Blackberry um, by Jackie McNish and Sean Silkoff. Yeah, what's where you want to start on this one?
Um, First of all, I have not gotten to see the documentary yet, and I am worse off for it. So I think I will try to fix that as soon as I can. I would like to see. Was the documentary any good? I know we talked about
Uh,
it off camera, but
the movie. It's a
off
movie, not a
mic.
documentary. And yes, actually, I enjoyed it a
Hmm.
lot. I would recommend it.
So it's a movie. So it's not even like a doc style like what we watched for the Blood Lady.
No, it's actors. It
Hmm.
stars what's his name? Who's the guy whose name I can't think of? Oh, Jay Baruchel.
Hmm.
And then Glenn Howerton from It's Always Sunny plays uh what's the
The
Jim
nerdy guy.
what's his name? No, the business guy. He
Oh, the
plays Jim
business. Oh, he
Basali.
plays the business guy.
And one thing I love about Glenn Howerton is that man can yell better than any actor on the planet, and he yells through the whole movie, and it's fantastic.
I can see that. Actually, that is perfect. That's a perfect.
He does the bald cap; it's very wild.
Nice.
So
What
I
is the
would
movie
recommend it.
called?
It's called Blackberry.
The movie's called Blackberry. Okay.
Um,
Yes. Oh, I could totally see this. This is actually not far off from how I pictured these two. So
yeah, it's the nerdy guy and the business guy. I mean, not the story we've certainly seen before in the tech sector.
yeah, that's probably the part of the story that I vibed with the most was the dynamic between those two. The so-called creative, was it Mike Lazaridis? He's the CEO.
Yes.
And who is the engineer?
Uh,
It's
well, Mike was the tech guy, and Jim was the CEO business guy.
Oh, right. Jim Balsillie.
Yeah, the
Yep,
president.
I got their names now. Okay. So I liked that they like how uh how they complemented each other, how it was like very much a kind of like a successful marriage for a bit, and then things went really bad for them, and they you could tell. I think you could even tell in the beginning how things were gonna shake out. You could see the cracks all the way in the foundation. I think the intro was pretty neat. The intro to the book was, he's on a flight to Saudi Arabia, I think, to pitch the product, and like he's not getting any signal, and there's a big outage, and it's all from this little this like glitch that happens in Slough, England, where they that's where they have all their terminals, and the terminals aren't starting. There's like a big tech problem with the terminals, and this like little problem turns into a major problem, and they never really quite recover from that, um, because they're about to get eaten up by Apple. Um, yeah, but overall, I mean, it's your traditional business history story of these are two very little known Canadian guys that are destined for great things, and things kind of break right for them, and they found this company. They call it Blackberry.
Yeah, I agree. Very well written book, very entertaining. A very interesting story. I think for me, and we'll talk about this with Built to Fail coming up in a minute, but I think the biggest takeaway for me, and I don't know that the book fully landed this point, but it got pretty close, is that it's easy to say BlackBerry is went out of business because of iPhone, but that's not really true. They were already having issues prior to the iPhone. I mean, this was a company that really sort of grew at all costs, skirted the edge, broke every rule they could, and that works for a while. But it was really a series of poor management decisions that really led them to failure. It's always interesting to me that the narrative that comes out of these business failures, and you can point to a lot of them, is it was technology, it was evolution of culture or technology or changing tastes or whatever you want to call it that put them out of business. It was you could look at Toys R Us. Oh, it's people started buying online, and it's like, no, it's because private equity bought them and sold them with so much debt they could never be profitable. There's always a story behind the easy story, and I appreciated that about this one, where yeah, I mean, the iPhone obviously had an impact on what they were doing, but it was the few years before the iPhone where they made a series of bad decisions that meant there was no way they'd catch up when the iPhone did come out. And so it was that was one of the things about these two guys that was interesting. If you look at Apple's kind of the obvious parallel with Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs was the cunning one, and Wozniak was not. I really felt like both of the BlackBerry guys were cunning guys. That's what was interesting to me is they were both pretty ambitious, hard-going guys. And I think that's one of the reasons that it fell apart as quickly as it grew. So there was definitely some good takeaways from this one.
Yeah, my favorite part of the book. As you were sharing, I was trying to get to my notes that I took for this book. I really liked the um, something as that we take completely for granted as consumers of products, is the detail, I guess, the care that the engineers put in these things, and the things that it's interesting to me that always the things that the engineers like are not always the things that are going to be selling points for the consumer. So one of the major rifts with this product um, had to do with the buttons versus a touchscreen, and I thought it was like, and I underlined the part where, like, I highlighted the part where they talk about um, Lazaridis's uh, the way he describes like the buttons and like the feeling of like pushing the buttons, and he said like basically that's what people who like he put a lot of stock into people preferring hard buttons over preferring the touchscreen. And the reality of it was that it didn't really seem to matter to the majority of consumers. The overwhelming majority didn't care what they were getting. In fact, they even kind of learned I guess they learned to adapt to a touchscreen a lot faster than Lazaridis had thought. He thought that it made it really seem to me kind of made it seem like he thought the touchscreen was going to be like a fad. He thought that the like touch keys were going to be a fad that would be like forgotten about. People would want their buttons back, and so he really tried to make that a feature that the BlackBerry would be the one that would keep these buttons when you had Samsung and Apple were taking your buttons away from you. And he really doubled down on it, even to the point where the latest model that used the feature had like these very um, the way that they were laid out, the layout of the buttons was very intentional and ergonomically designed, and while being practical, he put a lot of thought and effort into that design. And ultimately, I think the decision that they ended up going with was Balzilli basically said like, we'll sell the button model, but we'll also sell it. We're gonna also make a touchscreen model, and that ended up costing the company a lot more money to produce both. And it was in the end they kind of failed to adapt to what they saw. But I still give them credit for digging in their heels, and even though the decision did turn out to be a costly one, they doubled down on the company that has buttons over a touch screen.
Hmm? Well, it's kind of an interesting arc because at the beginning of the BlackBerry story, they made a lot of assumptions about what customers would and would not want. They said customers only want email. We're going to make an email only device. They want a device they don't need a color screen or fancy features or a stylus. They want long battery life and their email. And they were right at the time. The problem is, you laid out that there was another great example where when the iPhone came out, they said the iPhone is a data suck on these on cell networks. It's going to be slow. It's not going to work. We like our BlackBerry because it uses very little data. It's always been that way. We're smarter than everyone else. We know the iPhone's going to fail on these networks. And by the way, it did fail on AT&T's network when it first launched. It grounded it to a halt. What they didn't anticipate was customer demand for the product would be so popular that AT&T had to upgrade to 3G in the next model of the iPhone and would have to upgrade their towers and their systems. And all of a sudden, nobody talked about how data was a problem. So you can't get stuck in these ruts where I knew what customers wanted 10 years ago. I still know what they want today. You got to listen to the customers and they're going to tell you what they want. And you got to get a solution around that, not the other way around. And companies that get very big like that can sometimes lose that sight. And it's true of Blockbuster too, by the way, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, yeah. They did do like market testing and things like that here and there, but it seemed like at most of the turns they only took that as surface, kind of like lip service, I guess. They didn't really adhere to what the consumers actually were saying. I'm really pissed. I took such good notes, and I highlighted them. I can't find them. Damn good
Oh,
reads. I thought it would be easier to find my notes on here. I have the book pulled up, but I can't find the notes what I had highlighted. Um oh well. Yeah. So it I the whole time I was kind of waiting to see how the other shoe was going to fall off, like what was going to be the thing that ultimately caused this company to fold. And I thought, oh yeah, surely it's going to be the release of the iPhone. It's going to kind of out outpace, outmod like technologically, but not. It wasn't really the case. Like it seemed like the BlackBerry was very much like it could have hung on. It didn't seem as inevitable a defeat as I had previously thought going in. I thought it could have kind of stayed in the game as like a pretty competent third party. Um, what do you think? What would you say ultimately did them in the end? What was the kind of the final
Their
straw, if
their
you will, for them?
their hardware and software got worse and worse, not better. I mean, Android came around not long after and was very successful. So there
Mm-hmm.
was a market for a secondary device. It's just when they made a touchscreen device, it was bad and customers hate it, and it was one of the most returned devices in the history of cell phones. When they had an opportunity to upgrade their software into a brand new platform, they wanted to hold on to the old one because it's what had always worked. So they just weren't willing to innovate properly. There's a difference between innovating and innovating correctly. You can innovate badly, and the decisions they were making, it was just bad decision making, and it happens to a lot of companies. But it's not, and that's one knock on the movie version. I will say it's a great movie, but they do lean a little heavy into the iPhone as the killer that I don't think really. I get it. For a movie, you got to simplify the story a little bit. It's a little obvious. Um, Mind you, by the way, also at this time, they're under SEC investigation or whatever the Canadian version of that is for fraud. I mean, there's certainly other stuff going on as well. Um, it also, by the way, didn't help that they were a one product company. Apple makes computers and phones and iPods at this time. They're diversified. BlackBerry only made BlackBerry,
Mm.
and so any downturn was going to do them in. So there was a lot of problems with this company. It certainly was not the iPhone that killed it. It just sped it up.
When was the heyday of the BlackBerry? Like, if you could point to a single year, what I think they say it in the
Um,
book. Where was the ideal time where BlackBerry looked to be unbeatable? Was it 2009, 2010?
well, the iPhone was introduced in 2007, so you're
Mm-hmm.
kind of in that and then the internet really exploded in 99 2000. So you're kind of spanning that time right in there. Cell phones exploding as well in kind of that 03, 04, 05 span, um, where BlackBerry really led.
Yeah, like they mentioned, like President Obama used a BlackBerry, and they had all these other very famous politicians and celebrities alike that like were glued to it.
It was a great product. Listen,
And
when it worked, it worked.
it
You know,
was, yeah. I mean, that was the thing about it. I think it had this reputation for reliability, and back when people really just used it mainly to check their email and respond to emails, that was, I think, the big pull feature was you can be connected anywhere, um, for your business. Then once things got to be more like, I guess, the other features that other phones could start, doing like apps and games, and BlackBerry very much doubled down on like, no, you could check your email. Like that was a really big thing, that they really insisted on marketing. And like you said, they didn't really diversify. There wasn't a lot of diversification much. So, um,
well, listen, here's the thing. You know why Google can just throw money at self-driving cars and drones and things that'll never make them money? It's because they have an advertising business that makes them $1 gazillion every year. You got to make money to spend
yeah.
money on fun, interesting things.
Remember when Google made a gaming
And
system?
BlackBerry.
They made a console.
I Listen.
I
There
just
is a
thought of that the other
very,
day. I was
very.
like, that's right. The Google Stadia was a thing. That's right. They got into the console game, not for long, but
I
it was they did it. Like you said,
I
they
was on a
throw money.
I was on a contractor's webpage the other day, and there was a link to their Google Plus page, which
Mm-hmm.
doesn't go anywhere because that product doesn't exist anymore. But I was like, oh yeah, that's right, Google Plus was the thing.
Right,
Yeah,
Google. They
so
tried to get into social media for a bit.
I think that we're both saying we enjoyed the book and would recommend. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, overall, I would say I'm going to give up looking for my notes now. Goodreads, you can do better. Goodreads.com, do better,
Do
and
not
make it
recommend.
make it easier. Make it easier to find my damn notes that I took for this book. I highlighted things. I took notes. I have no idea how to get to them. Your site sucks. I'm sorry. Um. All right. Yeah. Overall, I would recommend it. I would recommend it to borrow. Um, and I would say read it before you watch the movie. I still haven't watched the movie, but I think they're good. It's a good pairing.
Two
You
great
kind of
tastes
see
that
the
taste great
inspiration.
together.
Yeah. Who else was in the movie? Anybody that is
No
worth
one,
talking
no
about?
one else really. It was a
Okay, yeah, not
small
really.
independent movie. It was not
Yeah, yeah.
so not much else,
Yep.
but it's definitely good.
Sean, what's our bonus
Uh,
book? Or what would you say? I don't we didn't
Matt.
get
We
your
went
rating.
for the three peat.
We did.
Oh,
Did
I
we
would
get your
absolutely
rating?
I'd recommend the book and the movie.
That's what I figured.
I think they're
Yeah.
both good. I bought it. I'm sure at some point I will reread it. It was definitely compelling. Honestly, Matt, I'm going to just spoil it up front. I thought all three of these books were pretty good.
Mm.
I don't really have a complaint about any of them. Some were better than others, but I think they were all enjoyable reads, which I think this may be the first summer we've done this where I've said that. It was a couple of good picks, but Matt, we got to move on to our third book here. Built to Fail, The Inside Story of Blockbuster's Inevitable Bust by Alan Payne. This was a book I had not read and you had not read, but had suggested that we potentially check out. Written by Alan Payne, who was a Blockbuster franchisee for a number of years, so had the inside scoop. Matt, what did you think of this one?
Um, this one, my overall impression was I liked it. It was a little different from the um business history books that we tend to read, which are more of the like telling a story from like a more either an outsider's perspective or like an embedded journalist perspective. This one was a person like a person who had worked for Blockbuster for many years, and who was it kind of felt like in the beginning he's like you're sitting in his house like by the fireplace, and he's like, come on in, I'll tell you the story of how, like, basically like your car gets a flat tire. This is how I envisioned it, right? Your car gets a flat tire and you knock on the nearest person's house, right? And this guy, the author of this book, answers the door and he says, oh, I'll call you a tow, but in the meantime, while you're waiting for the tow truck to come on in, I'll sit by my fire and I'll tell you the story of how Blockbuster shot itself in the foot. And I know because I know all about it. And like I told them, I warned them this was going to happen. But did they listen to me? Hell no, they didn't. So that was this whole story was basically his. I don't know if I'd call it a cautionary tale or a just a story about how he knew he was right all along. But um, overall, he had the inside scoop. He knew what was going to happen, and his thesis is a very interesting thesis. His whole thing is like, no, Netflix didn't ruin Blockbuster. That's like the media spin. What ruined Blockbuster was Blockbuster. They ruined themselves. And I don't know. I guess we can whether or not that's true is a matter we can debate. Um, I think he made a very compelling case for it. He's basically said that he lays out the premise that if Blockbuster had adapted itself to, rather than rapid expansion, just like figuring out a better model for their stores, they would still be around today. Right? That was kind of the heart. Am I getting
Yeah,
that right?
yeah, and we just talked about with Blackberry. I'm just a believer that uh, fads or changing culture or even changing technology is rarely the sole reason a company fails. It's just not. And you can look at malls are dying because of online shopping, right? It's an easy story. I don't think that's true. Retail is failing everywhere, mainly because they're all over leveraged with debt. Um, Stores are stocking cheaper merchandise that people don't like. I mean, there's a lot of like culture as a whole is more separated instead of coming together in community gathering places. I mean, you can look at any of these examples. And do I think Blockbuster would still be in business in 2023 if they had done better? Probably not. I think the technology would have eventually caught up with them. But I think Alan makes a good point, which is they got a lot more life in them in the rentals. When Blockbuster went out of business, people were still renting DVDs. So forget streaming. Just Redbox was huge when Blockbuster went out of business. Now, mind you, Redbox right now not doing as great. So fair enough. But I'm totally with you. This is just a classic example of retail mismatch. They could be selling Legos or bread. It doesn't matter. They went out of business because they were just a badly managed business.
Do you miss Blockbuster, Sean?
Well, first of all, did you go to Blockbuster as a kid?
I did. I went I wouldn't say all the time. I went. It was a treat. It was definitely a treat. I do have very fond memories of my local Blockbuster and Plaza Video, which was basically a like a Blockbuster under another name. But the rental, I guess I very much miss the rental service as a whole, even though it is kind of superfluous or outdated or not necessary. I miss the experience of it. I guess I miss the permanence. If you the commitment, I miss that like kind of if you nowadays, right? At the risk of sounding older than I am, if you want to watch a movie and you go on a streaming service, you start the movie. If you can give up on that movie 5 minutes in and decide that you hate it because the opening scene was dumb or like this, you had something else in mind, and you can theoretically flip through hundreds of movies and not settle on any of them in a single night. In Blockbuster world, you had money for maybe one, maybe two DVDs, three if you're very lucky, right? Or VHSs even, and you were committed to those movies. You were on a Friday night. Those were the three movies that you rented. Those were the movies you were going to watch, even if you didn't like, even if the first 5 minutes was a snooze fest. You're still going to sit and watch those movies because you paid or you committed to renting those movies. And sometimes I think the best, you might watch one of your favorite movies of your lifetime because you committed to giving it more than 5 minutes of a chance. Today, that's just, I mean, unless you're gonna actually watch more than 5 minutes of a film that you're tuned out on or don't care as much, I feel like you're not gonna have that experience. It was just something about going to a place and like talking to somebody and hearing their recommendations and this is a new one, this is great, like I just watched it this weekend, or if you like that movie, you should check out his other stuff. Like I feel like that it captures the human spirit more so than like any algorithm can. So there's a lot of reasons, but Blockbuster always had a fond place in my heart. I was very sad when it eventually shuttered its doors. I don't think there's ever going to be a thing like it in the future, because they just see the future is more driven toward streaming.
Well, I don't know if it's a good comparison, but record stores are still around. I mean, there is. It's just that there's no advantage. Like anyway, We did not have Blockbuster. We had Hollywood Video where I lived, and actually, we had an independent store in our very small town that had a naughty adult section. Not that I ever got to go in it, but I agree with you, Matt. One of the worst things about the internet is discoverability. It's impossible to discover anything on the internet. That's why I like going to bookstores. Do they have the biggest selection or the cheapest prices? No, but I can look at a shelf with a bunch of options and kind of browse around. And so, absolutely, it sucks that that's lost because you would discover things you wouldn't normally have seen. And they're trying to fix that with an algorithm, and I agree with you. It's just not the same. But I was also a back in the day a subscriber to Netflix DVDs by mail, and that was an awesome experience. By the way, a service that just closed this year. Imagine Blockbuster could have still been doing that in 2023. That was a great experience because it was the thrill of having your queue, the notification they shipped out. You weren't sure what you were going to get based on your queue, and you'd get a few of them in the mail, and it was easy. Yeah, it's I agree, it's a missed opportunity, but it's just the technology was it's kind of like could BlackBerry have made a competing phone with the iPhone? And absolutely. Boy, I don't know if video rental was ever long for this world. I really don't. I don't know if there's any, again, and that's what's interesting about the book is Blockbuster is already out of money and failing by the time they're given lifelines, whether it's the rental kiosk or streaming or DVDs by mail or any of these other options. They're already in trouble and they couldn't use any of those lifelines. That was Blockbuster's problem.
Right. I think that was his case in point was that when Netflix came around, there were so many other options that Blockbuster had, and they didn't follow any of them. They just kind of kept going with this old model, and they expanded very, very fast. I think that was another argument he made in the book was that there was much more thought given to expansion of these stores than there was given to development of like internal development, and then it was all kind of the same. And that's the thing is it just, in the business world, you fail to adapt, then you're dead, right? You have to constantly be adapting and shifting to where the demand is. So Blockbuster didn't really do that.
The thing is, expansion is hard. When you have thousands of stores of any business, I got to give McDonald's a lot of credit. Because when you get a Big Mac in Alabama, it's the same Big Mac you're getting in Washington. And that's damn impressive. Like, that's not easy to do. And when you have the logistics of a Blockbuster opening stores at a rapid rate, you're just setting yourself up for failure, quite frankly, and that's unfortunately the story. I will say, Matt, you did mention the author. I am generally against the "I told you so" business books. Like, I was there and they should have listened to me. A good example, there was a book on Circuit City I read. It was written by the son of the founder. And he was basically like, the company was great when my dad ran it. And then as soon as they got rid of him, they drove it into the ground. And I told them they shouldn't. Like, it was really annoying, actually. I didn't like it. This book walks that line, I think, pretty decently. He's not annoying about it. And it's not all about him. He kind of pops in at times. But it's not I didn't mind it, which I was surprised. I was really worried when I recommended this book. I was like, written by a guy who knew better. I don't know, but I actually think he did an okay job in this, of telling the story and pointing out a few things.
Yeah. I agree. I think he definitely doesn't, he isn't as I told you so-ish. He's more just like, look, I was around, and I think it mostly seemed to me like he was irritated by the story that Netflix and streaming services killed Blockbuster, and he was kind of writing that wrong. He was kind of writing that truth. He was like saying, like, actually, this is really what happened. It wasn't these streaming services. It was this other stuff that was going on internally that I saw firsthand with my 20 plus years at the company.
I love that he kind of showed the alternate side, right? It was like the Blackberry book being written by an Apple employee who said, while Blackberry was doing that, we were doing this. Because he was kind of, a lot of the times he was like, while Blockbuster did X, at my stores we did Y. And here's why we did it and why it worked and didn't. And he didn't do it in sort of a we're better way. It was just sort of saying, we experimented and it could have worked. Blockbuster didn't. Here's what happened. And I thought, boy, if you were rating just a story on Blockbuster, like a journalist had written just an overall story of it, I think you would have really missed that angle, because I think then you would have leaned more easily into that, well, it was inevitable, instead of saying, look, here's a guy who was decently successful as a franchisee. The model could have worked. So I think actually the book was maybe a little better because he wrote it, and was able to add in that flavor and flair.
A good pairing that I want to also shout out, because we did have in the previous book we talked about, there was the pairing of the film Blackberry with the book Losing the Signal. I want to pair a film here. I don't know if you've seen it, but 2020's The Last Blockbuster was a documentary style look at not only the very last Blockbuster, which I believe is still in operation today in Bend, Oregon. But it's really a story about the history of Blockbuster as a whole. I guess the only downside is that the film doesn't really delve into, not that it's a downside, because if you read the book you really get both perspectives, but the film really attributes the myth, like really I guess backs up the myth that Blockbuster was just kind of destined to be washed over by streaming services. And but it also says that like even Netflix reached out kind of a hand and said, like, you know, we could partner up, or basically I think it was like kind of like a buyout or something, and Blockbuster turned them down. So the movie The Last Blockbuster, what I like about it is it actually there's very famous people that will come in and like offer their opinion about Blockbuster. Kevin James is in it. Uh, Kevin Smith, I mean, not Kevin James. Kevin Smith. Who else is in it? Quentin Tarantino did an interview for it. I think Tom Cruise. Like they interviewed some pretty big names out there. Jim Carrey, Tom Hanks. And they all kind of like give their opinions about Blockbuster and what it did for their careers, and their inspiration. Quentin Tarantino said it, like Blockbuster and movie rental places like that basically are what inspired him to become a director. And same thing with Kevin Smith. Like the idea of like an in town, like local video store were very inspirational to them. So it's worth watching. I liked it. It was humorous at some parts. The Last Blockbuster 2020. There was a part where one of my favorite parts was when, as they were closing, the Colbert Report, I believe, was still on the air, and they had acquired pieces from the set of Gladiator somehow, and they ended up selling them to one of the this is when like there was only a handful of Blockbusters left. They ended up in a Blockbuster in like Alaska. So that was kind of cool. They talk about that in the documentary. I have, a matter of fact, I have a Be Kind Rewind poster in my basement. So just as a tribute to the good old days of Blockbuster. That's how much of a fan I am. I don't know. It's
Well,
one of those just
Matt,
like messages of the '90s that I miss. Yeah.
well, I was curious, so I decided to look it up. And right now on eBay, you can purchase an actual ticket and program from the 2001 Blockbuster Entertainment Awards.
Really?
Yes, now available. By the way, they have a schedule to appear in a performance. Creed performed higher at the 2001 awards. $71 is yours. There's a lot of
Could we say, is that the most early 2000s thing? Creed performing higher at the 2001 Blockbuster Awards.
Yeah, it's not ideal. The fact that there was a Blockbuster Awards at all. But
Man,
yeah, there's a lot of
that is
fun
some early
Blockbuster
2000s right there.
memorabilia
Mm-hmm.
On eBay. So check that out. Yeah,
You can
Matt,
watch the full 2000 Blockbuster Awards are on YouTube.
Listen, that if you want to do a live commentary, that could be a hoot.
I think this put that in the idea folder.
Am I going to regret?
Yeah, you probably will.
Am I going to regret mentioning it?
Mm-hmm. That would make a fine live show for our Patreons, and then we'll have the recording up after.
Favorite group rock. Your nominees: Bon Jovi, Creed, Limp Bizkit, Red Hot Chili Peppers, and Santana.
Of course.
Oh, listen to this. Favorite female new artist. This is great. Dido, Macy Gray, Mandy Moore, Pink, and Jessica Simpson.
Yep.
This is wild stuff.
That all tracks. But any how would you rate this book? How would you I
would recommend I would also recommend it.
I would recommend it. Yeah.
I would go 3 for 3 this summer. I would say read all of them.
Yeah. And watch the movies if you got time. We happen to pick 3 books that all have companionate movies. Into the
Very
Sea.
True. We did good, man. We crushed it this summer.
We did. Good stuff. Even though we didn't get a Murakami. This is our first summer, I think, without a Murakami reading.
No, definitely. We did like 2 summers before we read, and then we read it. So yes, there have been several. I guess
it's our first summer without a like a whimsical Japanese author, because we skipped a Murakami and we read you read The Remains of the Day.
No, we never talked about it on the show. I got out of reading it.
Right.
It's still set on my bookshelf. I should get around to that.
It's a wonderful book.
Well, Matt, I want to wrap up here because I know you have this evening. You've got to go watch The Golden Bachelor.
I sure do. It's the golden hour, starting very soon.
I watched the first episode. I'm going to watch this season. You talked me into it.
Okay, good. What'd you think?
And boy, what's his name? Gary.
Yeah, the Golden Bachelor.
I love that guy. He's great. I love that guy. I've never seen The Bachelor before. He's great.
72 years old.
He's a real he's a real goofball.
He is. Looks phenomenal.
A nice guy. So who knows? Maybe on a future episode we'll do our Bachelor update.
71-year-old Gary Turner, a retired restaurateur who likes to play pickleball and go four-wheeling. That's how they describe him.
He's classic old person. It's great. It's great. Yeah. It's him. It's the old ladies. It's awesome. It's great.
Yeah.
Golden Bachelor.
They're firebrands. Yeah.
We'll put a pin in it here so we don't keep Katie waiting. Folks, UpForDebate.tv is our website. You should go check out our past episodes, including our whole summer of Harrison Ford. You can subscribe wherever you get podcasts with a video on YouTube. But we're going to wrap it up here. So on behalf of Matt, I'm Sean. We appreciate you being here. We're going to see you next time for another great episode of Up for Debate.